Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. On the far western satellite loop, we've got a system out here which has been pretty stationary over the Sea of Okhotsk for the last week, and these waves down here over the southern portion of that circulation developing and moving up to the north there, and one coming up right there ran into this easterly flow that's developed along the Aleutians, with the clouds you can see moving from west or east to west along the chain as lower pressure down to the south continues to move off to the east. So we've got warmer air aloft up over the southern Bering Sea, and that creates that inverted easterly flow that we see going on there. On the GOES loop here, we've got a couple of weak bands of moisture. This one right up through here, that's associated with the Arctic front. Another really weak trough right through there. And then high pressure covering all of the eastern interior and right down across the Panhandle into the Gulf of Alaska. And this band right along the Alaska Peninsula this morning, lifting northwestward, a little bit of light precipitation associated with that, but clearing out nicely across the Aleutian Range and into northeast Bristol Bay, as well as looks like right down to Cold Bay or Falls Pass here. Kodiak had a lot more sun than I thought they were going to have yesterday. Clear night, started out sunny, but a few clouds developed, especially on the east side here. You can see some of that right in that area, but no clouds here over the southeast coast at all. And back out to the west, some rain, Adak, Anatka, windy conditions that go along with that, and also rain in Alaska, about 1,500's worth in the last 24 hours. And then this front stalled out here, actually beginning to work back to the west. So some snow out at Chimia, but light amounts even at that. And the wind's not all that strong, just easterlies, gusting to up to 40 miles an hour at times there, mostly at Adak and Atka. Lighter winds up over the Pribilofs. And up here to the northeast, or over the northwest, that front brought quite a drop in the temperatures, starting out in the upper 20s at both Point Hope and Cape Lisburne this afternoon. But as that front edged its way eastward, they fell to about zero, just above zero during the afternoon hours today. So there's much colder air back to the west and northwest of that front. And eventually it's going to be sliding eastward, but this whole system is bumping up against the upper level ridge that's been holding and keeping the interior fair and dry for the last several days. On the chart today, here's that weak front right through this area. Weak, actually a pretty good temperature contrast with it, but not really producing a lot of wind or a lot of snow. Southerly winds though, 15 to 25 miles an hour out in advance of that front, right up to the Arctic coast there, central Arctic coast, but snowfall amounts have been pretty light. Just traces showed up at Kotzebue and Nome, and back out towards St. Lawrence Island and those areas. Nothing down here, of course, over the southwest interior. High pressure at the surface up over the Yukon Flats area, back toward the Koyukuk Valley. That allowed temperatures to drop into the mid-20s over the Yukon Flats this morning, and kept the light wind conditions all the way down to south central Alaska. So that resulted in some fog here over Cook Inlet, as well as other areas across the southern interior, which broke out quite rapidly to sunshine this afternoon. You can see a few lines there across the southeast coast, and again getting gusts to 50 miles an hour at Eldred Rock and Lynn Canal there. Otherwise, areas of wind in the 20 gusts, 35 mile an hour range on down toward Dixon Entrance, but less wind out along the coastal areas there, but with the trough off the coast, keeping the offshore flow going, and as a result, that's keeping the clouds streaming westward. So that'll eventually just go overcast Kodiak Island tonight. And for tonight, you can see I drew the clouds right up to the Aleutian Range there, right up along the Kenai Peninsula areas. very weak low circulation here over the Gulf of Alaska. So not much gradient at all. So light wind conditions will continue across this entire area. A clear night over the southern half of the state, actually, as well as all of the southeast coast. No change here over the Panhandle. All this moisture is going to stay south of the area, more down toward the Queen Charlotte Islands, but that'll begin to creep northward over the next couple of days. This first front slowly trying to push its way eastward there as it bumps up against that upper level high pressure area. Another front here with colder air again poised to drop southeastward. There'll be a few flurries here up over the northwest areas, as well as the front as it passes the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, kind of an increase in the winds now over the Bering Sea. East-northeast start to pick up 15 to 25 miles an hour, and actually the winds along this frontal boundary here, especially out over the Aleutians, those will begin to diminish a little bit. Still could see some gusts to possibly as high as 40 miles an hour for the eastern Aleutians, with a chance of occasional light rain. Rain likely though, or light rain likely at times, with some fog here on the Alaska Peninsula. On the Pacific side, staying VFR in the Bering Sea side, clear over Bristol Bay with light winds, light east to northeast breezes in that area, and light winds here again over the southern interior. Moving to tomorrow's forecast, we still have this weak low pressure area over western Prince William Sound or along the Kenai Peninsula coast there. And that may allow clouds to pull back up to the coastline and to some extent in across the Sound, possibly to Portage. Really just that's about all this low will generate. Look for mostly cloudy skies for Kodiak. Some areas may be mostly sunny, but should be dry across this entire area. Nothing but sunshine again from the Yukon Valley down across the Fairbanks area over the 40-mile zones. We'll see a nice sunny day with light winds tomorrow. And again, mild temperatures, 45 to maybe even the lower 50s again over in Bristol Bay. A little bit cooler back up here to the north. And then you get into some variable cloudiness. This first front, again, a chance of flurries is about it on the eastern Arctic coast. But some leftover moisture back to the west. That'll definitely drop the ceilings down, especially on the northern slopes of the Brooks Range there. Look for some possible IFR conditions with this, and also back to the west here with this next front trying to push eastward. Eventually this high back to the west there near Wrangel Island will push that frontal boundary right down into the mostly the northwest interior by about Monday. And still quite windy here. You can see quite a gradient over the northern southeast coast, and it gets a little wavy as you head to the south, which means the winds are going to tend to begin to lighten up here possibly along the coastal, or right along the outer coastal areas, but pretty strong as they were today into the Dixon entrance area on down to the south, where some snow showers may develop mostly over the Queen Charlotte Islands, and actually might be a little bit farther to the north with upper level low pressure pulling back to the west under cyclonic flow now over the southeast coast. That's going to tend to start to increase the clouds a little bit there and bring an increasing chance of snow shower conditions, but I think it'll stay south of the area at least through tomorrow. We still have a very weak frontal boundary here along the Aleutians, eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula for a little bit of moisture in that area. Otherwise, just variable clouds for the Bering Sea and brisk easterly winds, again 15 to maybe 30 miles an hour all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. But again, just sunshine over the interior. And that holds through Monday as well, looking at just a lot of sunshine once again, and some clouds and flurries possible along this Arctic front here with the colder temperatures coming into the northwest and northern interior, spreading eastward along the Arctic coast. But look for the winds to stay rather brisk over the northern panhandle, but probably not as strong as what they'll be tomorrow. And again, upper level low pressure beginning to develop, and probably will pull some snow or snow showers in across Prince of Wales Island, so Klawock, Heidelberg, maybe Annette, Metlakatla. We'll see an increased chance of snow, definitely cloudy, more clouds anyway, with a chance of snow into those areas, and lots of moisture out over the Gulf of Alaska, some of which may develop with this weak low now over the Kenai Peninsula. It could bring a little bit of moisture, light and scattered along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, possibly up into western Prince William Sound. But sunshine again across all of Bristol Bay, up across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, into the interior. Clearing out here back to the northwest behind that frontal boundary, but temperatures will be much colder in that area, probably barely rising above zero. And then nothing going on really except for some scattered rain or snow showers out here over the Aleutians, back up into the Bering Sea. But Adak, Atka, Shemya look dry, very light winds. All the main gradient now up to the north, so these winds are quite light all the way over to the eastern Aleutians. You may see 20 miles an hour possibly here on the southern part of the Fox Islands, but looking at about 10-mile-per-hour winds from the Alaska Peninsula all the way out to the Komodorskis. Temperatures this afternoon ranged from about 32 there at Skagway to 39, it looked like in Juneau, down to 36 for Klawock. Otherwise, upper 30s here for the North Gulf Coast. Upper 30s to lower 40s for south central Alaska. Kenai had 41, 21 by contrast up in the Copper River Basin at Glen Allen. And mid-20s, mid to upper 20s here across the Tanana Valley and much of the central interior. But King Salmon rising to 52 degrees as that band of clouds pulled back to the west. Skies cleared out and those light down sloping winds push the temperature up into the lower 50s. Not a bad reading to start the month of March out with. Farther to the north, single numbers here over the upper Yukon Valley after the cold night. Arctic Village up to 7, 9 degrees at over there at Dead Horse, while Barrow now, those southerly winds ahead of that front push temperatures into the 20s there, but dropping back down towards 0 here back to the west. 19 at Shishmaref, but 27 here at Buckland, 25 at Nome, 19 down at Gamble, and mid to upper 20s are generally through the 20s here along the Yukon Delta coast, 30s inland, and then the 40s down toward Lake Iliamna with Port Ellsworth at 45, 36 out at Cape Newenham as well as St. George, 33 at St. Paul, 39 on Alaska with some rain, 42 at Cold Bay, mostly in the 30s and 40s over the Aleutians. And the lows tonight, again, 15 below to 25 below over the eastern interior, but cooling off, but staying above 0 here back to the northwest out toward Kotzebue Sound, but dropping below 0 along the western Arctic coast. Upper 20s, lower 30s here for the Bristol Bay area, mid 30s for the Aleutians, and look for highs in the teens for St. Lawrence Island tomorrow, as well as through the north central interior all the way to the eastern border, staying in the single numbers back up over the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast. Mid 30s to upper 30s here over south central Alaska, near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, and temperatures ranging from the upper 20s over the northern Panhandle to the mid 30s in the south, and maybe even warmer than that right out along the coastline, say for Port Alexander and Sitka. IFR possible here along the north slope or at the eastern Arctic coast, right down to the north slopes of the eastern Brooks Range. South of the mountains, though, VFR all the way down to Kodiak Island, VFR for all of Prince William Sound, maybe a patch of marginal VFR, possibly from Yakutat to Cordova. The Panhandle staying VFR tomorrow, and IFR possible here, but not too bad for the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, and then some spotty stuff on out to the west. Marginal VFR from St. Lawrence Island up through the Bering Strait, spreading in across Kotzebue Sound, say to just east of Selawik. For the passes, IFR for Anatuvik on the northern approach, but VFR to the south on the southern entrance. For Adigan, also VFR, with possible IFR on the north side. Lake Clark and Merrill, all wide open, ceilings and visibilities unlimited for all the Alaska range passes tomorrow. Isabel, VFR, and even Mentasta and Tanita looking really good, staying wide open. Portage, no obstructions to visibilities or ceilings at all. And for Chilkoot and White, not even any clouds whatsoever. So the freezing levels here is upper high pressure kind of breaks down. It's breaking down but sliding down over the southern part of Alaska. So 2,000 to 4,000 foot freezing levels tomorrow morning, right over warmest air again, right over Bristol Bay. Probably support those temperatures popping back up into the lower 50s in some areas, as well as the Aleutians, a little bit warmer air aloft, but at the surface near the Pribilofs, and then hugging the coastline all the way down to the Queen Charlottes. Looking at icing threats, really none to speak of, except possibly along the Aleutians here, kind of hit and miss in that zone, mostly below 10,000 feet. Upper level wind flow chart shows the upper level high dropping southward, right over the southwest interior, as a series of troughs begin to cut their way in across the northern part of the state. And then a jet from the northeast over the Panhandle going to hold on to those northeast winds at least for another day or two, but generally starting to drop off after that. 9,000 feet, we see light winds over much of interior Alaska, more westerly on the north slope, stronger and easterly here over the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, and the southern Bering Sea. Pretty brisk out at 3,000 feet, 25 to 35 knots there for the Panhandle, but light over southern Alaska, as well as the central interior. 20 to 35 knot winds up here over the northern Bering Sea, and 30 to 35 over the southern areas, possibly even 40 knots for the eastern Aleutians. With that turbulence, light to moderate chop here, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, much of the Bering Sea right up in through the Bering Strait, smooth over just about all of the interior areas, and then still looking at some mechanical turbulence there of the moderate variety across the southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Now, sky cover can be layers other than clouds, such as layers of smoke or dust aloft. That's not too uncommon, particularly out west during fire season, to have layers of smoke aloft. If the sky cover layer is anything other than clouds, that will be indicated in the remarks section. For instance, if you have a layer that is broken at 3,000 feet and it's smoke, what you would see in the remarks would be FU for smoke, broken at 3,000 feet, indicating to you that that layer, that sky condition, is smoke rather than being clouds. Let's talk now about vertical visibility. Vertical visibility, the abbreviation VV, is what you'll see when there is an indefinite ceiling at the airport. Now, a report of vertical visibility means that there is an obscuring phenomenon that is on the surface and hides the entire sky. The vertical visibility is the distance you can see by looking straight up into that obscuration. So if you took a look at our METAR, if you saw something that said VV005 in the sky condition, what that would tell you is there is an indefinite ceiling with vertical visibility into that obscuration of 500 feet. Now, if there is an obscuration that covers only a part of the sky, if there is a partial obscuration, reporting that requires the use of weather phenomena as well as sky conditions, and also a remark giving the phenomena that's causing that partial obscuration. Now, METAR does not make any distinction in the body of the report between an obscuration and a cloud layer. What it does is it simply encodes a partial obscuration as a layer whose base is below 50 feet. And if the base is below 50 feet, the layer contraction will be followed by a height indicator of 0, 0, 0. The layer amount contraction they use is determined by the total amount of the sky obscured, the same contractions that we saw earlier for clouds. Few is more than 0 to 2/8, scattered is 3/8 to 4/8, and broken is 5/8 to 7/8. If it were 8/8, if it were solid, it would not be a partial obscuration. And notice that the 3 zeros after each of those, the few, scattered, the broken, is giving you a base layer less than 50 feet. How we can code the obscuration. Now, if the weather phenomena is a partial obscuration, not just a low cloud layer, it's identified both in the body of the report and in the remarks section. For instance, if fog is obscuring 3/8 of the sky, here's how it would be coded in the METAR. 3/8 is scattered. Remember, scattered is 3/8 to 4/8. It would be scattered at 0, 0, 0. And in the remarks section, you would see the comment, fog is that scattered cloud information. Now, a ground-based or surface-based obscuration comes right down to the ground or right up from it in the case of obscurations like blowing snow and blowing dust. If no remarks are shown, if these remarks are not there, it actually is a very low cloud layer, less than 50 feet AGL, and not a ground-based obscuration.
Does this shot remind you of the concept of temperature? Well, it certainly does me. So let's talk about how temperature and dew point are reported in a METAR. First of all, the temperature and dew point are reported in whole degrees Celsius. Here you have 18 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature, and 16 degrees Celsius, which is the dew point. Now, in the event that the temperature and or the dew point are below 0, they'll put an M there first, and that stands for minus, would be a minus 18. Now, in this case, it's 18 degrees C and 16 degrees C, and probably the most difficulty anybody's going to have with this concept of the METAR is getting familiar with these Celsius temperatures. Right now, we don't know, is 18 degrees C hot, cold, comfortable, what? Well, there is an official formula for converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. It goes like this. The standard formula is you take the temperature in degrees C or Celsius, multiply that times 1.8, add 32, and that's your temperature in degrees F for Fahrenheit. Well, we have a friend who is just absolutely brilliant. He says, now, wait a minute, that's complicated. People have trouble multiplying times 1.8. Let's do it the easy way. And the easy way is take the temperature in degrees Celsius, multiply by 2, and add 30. And in between about 0 degrees C and 20 degrees C, it's going to come really, really close. And that's the easy way to do it, and it works every time. So take the temperature in degrees C, multiply times 2, add 30, and that's going to be pretty close to the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit if you're between 0 and 20 degrees C. Now, here are some guidelines to make this easy to remember. 30 degrees C, that's t-shirt weather. It's about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. 20 degrees C, that's long sleeve weather. It's about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. 10 degrees C, that's sweater weather, that's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. 0 degrees C is coat weather, that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And anything colder than that, you just forget about it. It's parka weather, brr. That's not extended mist, that's cold, that's brr.
Welcome back. Look for at least gusts to 50 knots here through the mainly Lynn Canal area. But sustained winds, probably something less than that. Still could see some gale force gusts into the central waters here coming out of the far eastern bays, and then dropping on down as you head south, just 20 to maybe as high as 30 knots here along the coast, but much lighter winds up along the north coast there. And then looks like Monday really dropping off now here, becoming variable, kind of indicating a change that is going to take place down there, and still light northeast winds up the coastline, but pretty light all the way up easterly. Still some higher gusts coming out of the bays, especially over the eastern areas there, with 30-knot winds sustained, maybe some higher gusts, and quite cold temperatures, so heavy freezing spray up in those areas as well. And moving along to south central Alaska, first with the North Gulf Coast, light variable winds there all the way up into Prince William Sound, as well as just about all of Cook Inlet. And then we'll throw a direction on those light winds northeast here across the Barren Islands, Shelikof Strait, east 15 there along the east side of Kodiak Island. And looking ahead to Monday, switch things around a little. All the winds stay light, might come up to 15 knots here across the Kodiak marine areas. Westerlies at 10 for the Barren Islands, and kind of a south component here to all the winds, but again light for the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. For the Bristol Bay zone, northeast at about 15, easterlies 20 here, but up to 25 knots on the southern areas of the Alaska Peninsula, right up towards Sitkinak. And for Monday, lighter winds yet, northeast breezes there for Bristol Bay, more of an easterly direction down along the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Strongest area looks like it'll be here for the Pacific side, with those northeast winds only at about 20 knots. For the Aleutians, excuse me, looks for the central areas here, north 15, and then northeasterlies at about 20 for Matka, and small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, and northwest, possibly as high as 20 knots out toward Shimia, but pretty light winds in this area. And then for Monday, really light winds just about everywhere. Same directions here, but barely a breeze at all west of Adak, and 10 to 15 knots from Matka back up toward the eastern Aleutians, and probably looking at some 20-knot winds here south of Unalaska and Nikolsky. For the Bering Sea, brisk wind advisories here for all of the southwest coast right up to St. Lawrence Island, as well as most areas of St. Matthew Island, and small craft advisories for the Pribilos, but those will drop off for Monday down to 15 knots, and that'll extend back up toward the coast, especially from Nunivak Island on down across Kuskokwim Bay, but still brisker winds continuing there up across St. Lawrence Island and down into the northern Bering. For the Arctic coast, looks like this for tomorrow, possibly as high as 25 knots for a period of time as that one front drags across the east side there, but dropping back to 15 knots toward the central coast. And then could see some 25-knot gusts here for Cape Lisburne and Point Hope in those windier areas, and then north 20 across the Chukchi Sea. For the Monday outlook, still not much change here in the pattern, holding on to 20 to 25 knots. Again, the Capes out here seeing the windiest conditions. Northwest 15 for the western coast, and pretty light here. Northwest becoming west. Might see winds kick up to 20 knots for Kaktovik. And for tonight, here's one front just about stalled out there on the east side, but slipping southward a little bit. Really no weather with it, just colder air behind it. Another one poised to move in behind that one, but no change over the southern interior tonight at all. Maybe the clouds will increase, definitely spread across Kodiak Island, maybe southern Cook Inlet. Chance of rain from, say, Ochignik along and out all the way to Adak, but nothing heavy. No change over the southeast coast. Clear, windy, and cold. That'll hold through tomorrow. May see an increase in the clouds possibly, but they also may just stay over Dixon Entrance. So nothing but sunshine there, as well as all of the interior here. Then some clouds, and it looks like most of the light snow or flurries will stay north of the Brooks Range, except some might slip down to the northern Seward Peninsula. And with this front on Monday, definitely colder air, but tending to break out and go VFR again over the northwest interior here. But lower conditions back to the east. No change here over the southern areas, maybe a few more clouds over south central Alaska. Have a great evening and good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.